Welcome back to the Connected podcast. I'm thrilled to bring you an extraordinary collection in which some incredible students take the driver's seat and host dynamic conversations with professionals from across the higher education sector, discussing the vital topic of student belonging. I'm excited to introduce Freddie Marlowe as your host today. Freddie is a second-year undergraduate student studying biomedicine. Freddie is talking to Dr Wendy Ashall, an associate professor in Anthropology and Central Foundation years at the University of Sussex. Wendy is about to embark on an exciting new role as the Academic and Quality Director at the University of Huddersfield, London.
So if I can start with our first question, what does student belonging mean in the context of higher education? And why do you think it's critical for academic success and retention if you think it is?
That's lovely. That's a good question. I think one of the dangers in higher education is that we are often subject to the latest buzzwords. And I think belonging, if you had your cynical head on, would be it's the latest buzzword, it's baked into the NSS. So therefore institutions are required to pay attention to student belonging. But if I put my sort of cynical head to one side, I actually think from my own lived experiences of higher education that belonging is incredibly important to how students experience their time in higher education. And for me, it's about a shared endeavour. It's being collectively involved in something. You know, teaching and learning is part of the same process. So I learn when I teach, and I hope my students learn when they peer teach. You know, it's mutually reinforcing, but it's also about relationships and support. That's what learning should be about. It's about becoming part of a community of practice that we're all in together, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And would you be able to build on a little bit about like how you foster that sense of belonging like throughout teaching? And you mentioned peer teaching as well. Could you talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah, I think particularly in my foundation year teaching practice, practically everything I do when I step into the classroom is about facilitating belonging, because to my mind, it is far more important for my students to feel that they belong and that they make friends and they build a productive relationship with me and other members of teaching faculty and also professional services than any subject knowledge I can equip them with, because I can equip them with skills and I can equip them with that sense of belonging. They can then go off and learn stuff. So for me, it becomes before everything else. So it's just silly things like making sure you learn people's names. You'd be surprised the amount of lecturers who don't know the individual names of their students. But it's not just about me learning their names. It's about me facilitating them learning each other's names.
Yeah.
So silly things that I do, like I make everybody make name labels at the start of the term. And then I give those out at the beginning of the class as a public humiliation when I'm struggling to learn people's names. But then people have them on the desk in front of them so other students know their names. And that way, that's a really easy way of helping students, build friendships. All the teaching strategies I use tend to use peer-led active learning strategies. So small group discussions, quick presentation tasks, posters. I've done all sorts of things using Lego in my teaching. So Lego is great for icebreakers, because people, when they're particularly shy or anxious in a new situation, which we all are, to be fair, if they can introduce themselves via a Lego model they've built, it's less pressure than introducing themselves to a bunch of strangers. And it's these things that you do, that the subject knowledge is in there and people are hopefully having those, but really it's about getting them talking to each other and building those friendships. And I've been very blessed at my time at Sussex to see that the friendships students have built in their first term with me have lasted then and been there for them throughout their time at university. And I think that's really key.
Yeah, so you've really seen how you facilitated that peer-to-peer interaction and how that's carried on throughout their degree. That's really nice.
Yeah. I think it should be really important in everything we do. I mean, I know people go, oh no, it's another icebreaker, and I run them for 5-6 weeks. But I mean, obviously I vary the thing that we're doing, because I just think that place of psychological safety, that feeling that you belong, that you know who's in the room, that I've role modeled it's okay to say stupid things and learn from them, means that we're all then able to speak and not have one of those awful seminars where only one person speaks and everybody else is looking at their shoes, hoping the lecturer doesn't catch their eye. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And feeling comfortable to participate is definitely one of those things that makes you more involved in the actual learning.
Yeah.
Which I think helps so much, especially for like retention and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is one of the things that belonging, I remember when I was first a student, so I was a mature student, so I was 10 years older than the other students. And I literally, for my first year, got butterflies in my tummy every time I went on campus. I was so nervous. And like the first presentations, I was there with my bit of paper, shaking away like crazy. And it's because I hadn't built those relationships with people. So I do pay attention to Maslow's hierarchy of needs when I'm training my doctoral tutors or other members of my teaching team, and it's baked into everything that I do. Really important for attention, but also for happiness. You know, being happy is quite important, I think. Yeah.
I think that's something that's really nice about what's happening in recent times. There's a real drive to focus on student wellbeing and staff wellbeing as well, which is equally as important, which I think is really nice. One thing I wanted to bring up, you mentioned being a mature student. There are quite a few demographics that face barriers into even entering higher education. Would you say that they also have like difficulties in integrating into universities? And what sort of demographics have you noticed have the most barriers to this?
Okay, I'm going to wind back a little bit, Freddie.
That was a long question.
No, it's fine. Because I think before that, I think it's really important to think about, it's about psychological safety, it's about belonging, it's about community, it's about relationships. But I think there's some key factors that get missed when we talk about belonging. So people often focus on what happens when the student is in the university. And to me, and based on my research, what's also important is how students came to be placed on the course. So whether they were recruited through direct application via UCAS, whether it was a change of offer when their A-level results were confirmed, whether they came in through clearing. And actually, I think once you begin to think about that longer student journey, it's also about relationships that people have with an institution that make them want to apply to it in the first place. So to my mind, when we think about that long student journey, that makes us reconfigure the way that we think about belonging, that we need to start making students or supporting students to feel that they belong to the university before they turn up on day one. Okay, so I think that's really important. And I think what my research did, so I was looking at foundation year student application decision making and course experiences. And what I found was that the pre-qualification application system is a major barrier in terms of student belonging for some cohorts of students. So we can think about belonging in that sort of traditional way. We know that first generation students, which I also was, mature students, BME students, students with additional support needs, whether that's learning needs or mental health challenges or physical health challenges, the evidence is overwhelming that these students find it more difficult to cultivate that sense of belonging. There's also historically been concern about commuting students. So this idea that if you continue to live at home, you would continue to have relationships with your friends from before university, and this was deemed as a threat to your ability to feel a sense of belonging to university. And I think that's beginning to change because more and more students, for financial and other reasons, are choosing to study at home. And I don't think it's as simple as that. I think some students commute and they've got a real sense of belonging to the university. Other students move on to the campus and never feel that they belong. So we really need to unpick what the multiple factors are that influence the ability of students to feel that they belong to the institution. So coming back to your question about different cohorts, if we look at it through the pre-qualification application system, we know that certain types of student are way more likely to be over-predicted at A-level. So there is a big problem with doing university applications, I think, on predicted A-levels. Winus, I think it was, no, Winus and somebody else, I can't remember his name, said that only 16% of predictions are correct.
Wow.
Yeah, 16%. So if you've been predicted a certain set of A-levels by your teachers, you are then looking at what kinds of university you can go to. And our system is really hierarchical. You know, you've got Oxford and Cambridge at the top, then you've got the whole wodge of Russell Group universities, then you've got your mid-tier, mid-tariff institutions and your post-92s. And if you know that you're predicted quite low A-levels, then you're only going to be looking at the ones you think you can get into. Likewise, if you've been predicted really high A-levels, you're going to be looking a little bit further up, because that whole marketization of the sector means everybody's trying to get into a good university, right? The best they can get into with their grades. But if we know that BME students and students from disadvantaged family backgrounds are way more likely to be over-predicted, my concern is those students are then applying to universities they're not going to meet the entry criteria for. And so in my research, what I found was they were being redirected to the foundation year instead. So, and I think foundation years are amazing things. I've worked in foundation year provision for 10 years. I sit on the foundation year executive committee. I think they're a wonderful way of supporting students to have the skills and self-confidence and subject knowledge they need to really hit the ground running in year one. But I am a little bit worried that some students that are already disadvantaged in a system are then being redirected to a foundation year, which is another year of fees, another year of living costs. And are they going to recruit the benefits of that in a way, you know, are they going to be happier because they've got into a good university, so it was worth the sacrifice? But for some of them, they might have then been placed on a course that they don't want, they didn't apply to, and that then might have a negative impact on their sense of belonging and what they then get out of taking that course. So that's kind of where my research has been sitting. But likewise, you can see, you know, it's brilliant because teachers are then trying to give students from disadvantaged backgrounds something really high to aim for, and it encourages them to apply to better universities. Because we know when we're looking at widening participation initiatives, a major problem is students from some backgrounds don't apply to good universities. So it helps with that. But I'm just a little bit worried about what the impact of that might be if they don't meet those entry criteria.
Yeah. I think that feeling of disappointment when they don't get the grades that they're predicted can go real knock to self-esteem as well.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is not all students are fully equipped and understand that when they apply to university. I didn't. I looked at the entry criteria on the website and thought that's what I needed.
Yeah.
And I went to an open day, got chatting with some guy. He turned out to be the admissions tutor for the course. And he was like, no, we'll give you a straight off offer. And I was like, but I don't even have A-levels. And he was like, no, we've got these different entry requirements for mature students. And I was like, well, I didn't know. Yeah, and I think some people who've got a long family history of going to university, who know how the system works, know when those A-level results come out, all is not lost, to try and negotiate. And most universities drop their entry criteria if they haven't got enough students. So you've got, and not all applicants know that. So that's an unfairness in the system. Likewise, what I also worry about is because of the way that universities adapt their entry criteria depending on how many applicants they've got. In a year where they've got lots of applicants, students with quite high tariff points might be redirected to, you know, might go into the foundation year, but in another year, if the same university's got fewer applicants, they'll go straight into undergraduate studies and on the same A-level results, and that just doesn't seem fair to me.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah. You touched on quite a few factors that can sort of change how a student feels like they've integrated by the university. Could you sort of explain a bit more about how those factors vary across the different demographics?
I think it's about, to my mind, it's about confidence. It's about knowing how the system works and support and information and guidance. And I don't necessarily mean just the information and guidance you get from schools and from prospectus. Lots of people are really reliant on first-hand knowledge, what we call hot knowledge. So that's having a family member, an older brother or sister, a cousin, an older friend who's gone through the system themselves, who can then support you. And I didn't have that. I was a first generation student, so I was completely reliant on published information. And that published information doesn't always give you those nuances.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that then again makes it more difficult for particular cohorts of students, exactly the kinds of people we want to come to university, to really understand and navigate that complexity.
Yeah, and it is so difficult to find that information as well. Short of going to the university and talking to the right people, as you said, you ended up just by chance talking to the admissions director, but if you hadn't have spoken to them, who knows?
Yeah, and likewise, if I'd been really financially challenged, so I came to a local university, so I could pop up for the applicant visitor day. But if your chosen university is quite way away and you maybe don't have the financial resources to attend lots of open days, then your ability to get that hold of that kind of information might be limited as well. So that's sort of compounding unfairness, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's might even be one of the reasons that people are staying at home so much now. It's because even travel costs just go up so much that it's impossible to even look at different universities as well.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem to be in the news anymore, but I do think we are still in a cost of living crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, bills have gone sky high. That's why lots and lots of students are choosing to study closer to home, which is good, I think, because it then softens the financial impact of going to university for them. It means they graduate with less debt, so they can just get on with the next stage of their lives, right? But we also then need to think about when students are at university, they're more likely to be working part-time if they can find a job. They're more likely to be facing commute costs rather than accommodation costs. And all these things can really impact on the amount of time that people spend on campus, which then can have an impact on their sense of belonging. Yeah. And I haven't even touched on accommodation yet.
No, I know a lot of commuter students who sometimes, if they don't only have like one lecture for the day, they don't even bother coming in because it's just not worth it if they've got like an hour's commute. And then I think you've got that thing of like a location lottery of where you live and what university is closest. And if that's like a good university, whether they're going to feel lucky that they've got like a decent university, or whether they've got to go somewhere that they weren't really keen on going, or like do a course that they don't offer at the local uni, but they've got to do something that they're not really super duper passionate about as well.
Yeah, and there was that study recently from Bristol, I think it was, university, that said, I think it was around 40% of students would change their course or institution if they could have done it again. Because often when people are making their choice of course and institution, again, like some quite limited information, and there's something weird in the system. So when you take that long sort of student life cycle approach, you go, hang on a minute. So we've got a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds choosing their GCSEs, or before that, choosing their GCSEs. That then shapes what A-levels they can do, which then informs what university courses they can do. It just seems bonkers, right? That you're making these decisions really early on with no understanding of what the consequences of them might be.
Exactly, yeah, and it feels such a way off as well. Like a lot of students in like those lower years don't even know if they want to go to university, if that's something they want to pursue.
Yeah, and so often we find students are coming to university studying a course because they were good at it at GCSEs, and that isn't necessarily the right thing for them. I almost wish we could all make everybody do a 4-year degree. Everybody does an interdisciplinary foundation year. That would remove the stigma or the negative impacts on those who do take a foundation year and give everybody a chance to make an actual decision about what course they should be doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And do you think that your research has addressed any disparities in belonging among different groups within the higher education? And for you, have there anything particular like trends or challenges that have stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, I mean, there are multiple challenges that the sector faces at the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of recruitment, we know a large number of universities are facing financial difficulties at the moment, over reliance on international students to bolster. I mean, we're in a hellish position, right? So we don't want to put the fees up because of the financial impact that would have on students, but we know we're losing money for every student we teach because the fees have not gone up. So the whole system, to my mind, is broken. And I think, without being flippant, that's a bit above my pay grade to fix. However, I am trying to now get the word out that, you know, I think we do need to move to a post-qualification application system so that students have got their A-level results so they can make informed choices about what courses they qualify for, but also to stop that sort of game playing by institutions around their entry criteria and that gap between published entry criteria and how low they will go to get the right number of bums on seats when they want to run a course. So I think that is a major thing. What concerns me at the moment is because the sector is facing so many challenges, and universities outside of the Russell Group are all dropping their entry criteria quite a lot. I wonder or worry slightly about students going directly into undergraduate studies who've got quite low A levels and whether they will get the academic support that they might need. Now, I know there has been some research that's indicated you can go quite down in grades at A level, down to sort of BCC, and it doesn't have an impact on degree outcomes. But that does then make you wonder why entry criteria are so high. But it also makes you think, well, at what point do we say actually a student with DDE, are they ready to go to university, for example? And if they are, and I personally think university should be open to everybody, what support might they need to really help them achieve and thrive at university? So I think that's kind of where I'm situating my contribution to this debate, is really thinking about the levels at which we take people into universities, the kind of support they might need, and actually looking at the way that we recruit students.
Yeah. Could you share any practical strategies or initiatives that like can help with that support and even like in recruitment to help create a sense of belonging that's a bit more stronger among the students?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we can practically do as teachers is be aware of how our students in the classroom were recruited. Because if students were recruited really late in the application cycle, so during clearing or at change of offer after their A levels are confirmed, these students are less likely to really understand about the course that they're on, not really know what it's about and what they can get out of it. They may have lingering feelings of stigma about being placed on a course that they didn't originally choose. And so then we need to work harder to make sure those students have been equipped with that information and give them the extra support they need to really feel that they've made a good choice. I mean, I know the policymakers are always looking at credit transfers and things like that. But if a student ends up a university on a course, a university they didn't choose and a course they didn't apply to, it might still be the right thing for them. But we need to know that and be able to help them and support them. And I don't know about UEA, but at Sussex, we just don't have that kind of knowledge when we walk into a classroom. We just don't know the kind of entry criteria or route that a student has taken. So we have no way of knowing. And I think actually we should really equip our teaching staff with a bit more information, not so that they can reach negative assumptions about students, but so that they can pitch what they're doing in the right way for the students in front of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. But then it's one of those things of like trying to ameliorate those biases if the teaching staff do have that.
Yeah.
I could like avoid that as well.
Yeah.
Thinking ahead, what sort of future research do you think that is most important for understanding and improving the sense of student belonging in higher education?
I think really, and it's kind of something I've hinted at so far, is really taking about that full journey approach. An awful lot of belonging research is really focused on year one.
Yeah.
And I would say that student belonging is a process, not a thing. You don't do loads of stuff to support students in the first term of the year one and then they belong and it's a job done, right? That sense of belonging needs constant support and building, because things happen. You end up doing a module where you don't know anybody else and you don't feel like you belong again, or something goes on in your personal life and it knocks your self-confidence. So we really need to think about belonging all the way through, from sort of GCSE all the way through to graduation, I think. And I think we need to see more longitudinal research around belonging.
Yeah, and sort of widening that focus.
Yeah, there's lots of research that looks at outreach. There's lots of research that looks at first year student experience. There's not much that looks at the application process, but there's a little. But we need that all joined up, I think, into a bit larger studies that's much more longitudinal.
Yeah, to really get a cohesive picture of what's actually going on.
Yeah, and that how things flex and change over time, and what kind of factors might impact a student. So a student might, join a course, be living on campus accommodation, have support services on the door, have a ready set of friends in their accommodation block, have access to all the support services, etc., and feel that they really belong. But then they might move off campus in year two, because often we only have accommodation for year one. And then they're suddenly commuting, they may be in a shared house with people they don't know so well, and then they might feel that they belong less to the institution as a result. So unless we do those kind of longitudinal studies, we would never capture that and then know what support to put in place.
Yeah, and especially in later years, I think like a lot of people do fall out with their housemates, and there's not too much going on for returning students. Like a lot of the intake and sort of like events that happen are geared towards like the first year students, which I think it makes it so much harder.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, there's something we do at Sussex in my school, is we do a reinduction at the beginning of year two. But it's just a couple of hours with the course lead, right, welcome back to year two, right? That is so important, because there is a massive difference between the teaching and assessment expectations between year one, where it doesn't count towards your degree award, at least it doesn't at Sussex, and between year two and year three, where there is a noticeable step change. And I think we need to really support students by making that really clear. But likewise, by the time you get to year three, you're doing more independent study, your number of contact hours has gone down a lot, and it's a big change again, and yet we don't seem to do anything to support our students entering year three. Or maybe you've gone off and done a work placement or a year abroad, and all your friends have moved on a year. What are we doing to support those students when they come back to campus? I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you so much. That was really, really insightful.
Yay!
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You made that a very enjoyable experience.
Thank you for listening to the Connected podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out the rest of our extraordinary Voices of Belonging collection and stay connected.